Everything you think you know about making a deal with the devil is wrong. The man who inspired every vampire movie, every mad scientist story, every tale of forbidden knowledge wasn't a fictional character dreamed up by some medieval storyteller. He was real. He walked among us. And what he actually did was so much worse than any legend could capture. His name was Johann Georg Faust. And in the early 1500s, he didn't just claim to have supernatural powers. Witnesses across Germany swore they saw him perform miracles that defied every law of nature. He didn't just boast about consorting with demons. Church records document his blasphemous claims in horrifying detail. And when he died, his body wasn't just found twisted and broken. It was discovered in a state so grotesque that hardened men of the cloth refused to describe what they had seen. But here's what will shatter everything you thought you knew. Dr. Faust wasn't some power-hungry madman. He was the most brilliant scholar of his age, a man who had mastered every field of human knowledge, only to discover that all of it, philosophy, medicine, theology, law, was utterly, devastatingly worthless. Tonight, we're going to uncover the true story of the man who made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of science, and discover why his horrific fate became the template for every monster story that followed. Picture 16th century Germany. The medieval world is cracking apart like ice in spring. For 1,000 years, faith had been enough. God's word was law, the church's authority was absolute, and questioning either was unthinkable. But now, everything was changing. Leonardo da Vinci was cutting open corpses in Camelot cellars, mapping the human body with obsessive precision. Copernicus was shattering the very heavens, proving that Earth wasn't the center of God's creation. Columbus had sailed off the edge of the known world and returned with proof that everything the ancient texts claimed about geography was wrong. For the first time in human history, men began to believe they could unlock every secret of creation through reason alone. The Renaissance wasn't just an artistic movement, it was a revolution of the human spirit. Man, not God, was becoming the measure of all things. Into this world of limitless possibility was born Johann Georg Faust. The historical records paint a picture of a man who embodied every contradiction of his age. Born around 1480, Faust earned degrees from the most prestigious universities in Germany. He mastered philosophy at Heidelberg, studied theology at Wittenberg, learned medicine at Leipzig. By his 30s, he was recognized as one of the most learned men in Europe. But academic success wasn't enough. Faust became an itinerant scholar, wandering from city to city, court to court, offering his services as physician, astrologer, and alchemist. And wherever he went, he left behind a trail of awe, terror, and scandal. The church denounced him as a blasphemer. Fellow scholars dismissed him as a fraud. But the common people whispered that he had powers beyond mortal understanding. Contemporary accounts describe a man of magnetic charisma and terrifying arrogance. At the University of Erfurt, he boasted that if all the works of Plato and Aristotle were lost, he could restore them from memory. In Würzburg, he claimed he could replicate every miracle of Christ. In Frankfurt, witnesses swore they saw him conjure spirits from thin air during a public demonstration. These weren't the ramblings of a madman. Faust was methodical, calculating, almost scientific in his approach to the impossible. He studied forbidden texts, conducted elaborate rituals, and claimed to have made contact with forces that existed beyond the veil of the visible world. What drove a man of such learning to risk everything? His reputation, his soul, his very humanity, in pursuit of knowledge that was literally damned. The answer lies in understanding what it meant to be a scholar in the 16th century. Imagine spending your entire life mastering every field of human knowledge, only to discover that all of it led to the same crushing conclusion: we know nothing. Medicine couldn't grant immortality. It could barely heal a wound. Philosophy couldn't explain the meaning of existence. It only created more questions. Theology promised answers about God and eternity, but demanded faith without proof, the very antithesis of scholarly inquiry. Law couldn't create justice. It only codified the arbitrary will of those in power. For a mind like Faust's, this wasn't just disappointing, it was unbearable. He had reached the absolute limit of human knowledge and found it to be a hollow, empty cage. Every book he'd read, every theory he'd mastered, Every brilliant mind he debated had brought him no closer to understanding the fundamental nature of reality. The brilliant scholar was trapped in an impossible paradox, too intelligent to accept simple faith, but not wise enough to recognize that his intelligence was leading him toward damnation. And so, in his study one night, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of centuries, Dr. Faust made a choice that would echo through history. He decided that if God wouldn't give him the answers he craved, he would ask the devil instead. The ritual itself was recorded in obsessive detail in the chapbooks that began circulating after his death. Faust drew a circle on the floor of his study, inscribed with symbols from forbidden grimoires. He lit black candles at precise intervals. At the stroke of midnight, he spoke the incantations that would summon a prince of hell. What happened next defied every expectation. The demon who appeared wasn't some grotesque horned beast. According to every account, Mephistopheles manifested as a sophisticated gentleman, elegant, articulate, and devastatingly persuasive. This wasn't brute supernatural force. This was intellect weaponized, temptation refined to its purest essence. Faust laid out his demands with the precision of a contract negotiation. 24 years. For 24 years, Mephistopheles would be his servant, granting him unlimited knowledge and power. In exchange, at the end of that time, Faust would surrender his immortal soul to hell. But the demon tried to warn him. In Christopher Marlowe's immortal play, Dr. Faustus, based directly on these historical accounts, Faust asks Mephistopheles how he can stand to be out of hell. The demon's reply is one of the most chilling lines ever written. Why? This is hell, nor am I out of it. Hell, he explains, isn't a place, it's a state of being. The eternal absence of God, a torment that follows the damned wherever they go. But Faust, drunk on his own intellectual superiority, dismissed the warning. He was a man of science and reason. He couldn't bring himself to believe in something he couldn't see or measure. Hell was a fable, a story to frighten children. The pact had to be signed in blood. Faust took a dagger and cut his arm, but his blood congealed, refusing to flow, as if his very body was rebelling against this act of self-destruction. Mephistopheles had to bring hot coals to warm the blood so it would run again. As Faust signed the document, the words homo, fugue, man, fly, miraculously appeared on his arm. A final desperate warning from heaven itself. He ignored it. The deal was done. The clock had started ticking. What followed were 24 years of unprecedented power and crushing emptiness. If you're shocked by what we've revealed so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because the true horrors of Faust's bargain are about to be exposed, and you won't believe what this brilliant man became in his quest for ultimate knowledge. The transformation of Dr. Faust from respected scholar to something barely recognizable as human is one of history's most disturbing psychological portraits. Armed with unlimited supernatural power, the man who had once dreamed of unlocking the secrets of the cosmos began using his abilities for increasingly petty and grotesque purposes. His grand ambitions curdled into cruel vanities. He traveled through time and space on a chariot drawn by dragons, but used this incredible ability to play pranks at papal banquets, making himself invisible, snatching food from the Pope's plate, and boxing his ears while he ate. He could summon the spirits of the dead, but wasted this power on party tricks for nobles, conjuring Alexander the Great just to prove the apparition was authentic by making a mole appear on its neck. He possessed the ability to create matter from nothing, but used it to fill his pockets with gold and conjure lavish feasts, living like a cosmic confidence man. When a skeptical knight mocked his powers, Faust caused antlers to sprout from the man's head. When a horse trader tried to cheat him, Faust sold him a magnificent steed that turned into a bale of hay the moment it touched water. These weren't the acts of a man who had unlocked the secrets of the universe. They were the desperate performances of a cosmic jester, a being so fundamentally broken that unlimited power only revealed the poverty of his imagination. The knowledge he had craved brought him no wisdom. The pleasures he could now command brought him no joy. He had traded his soul for a handful of dust and illusions. But the most tragic episode came near the end of his 24 years, when despair had begun to consume him completely. Faust asked Mephistopheles for one final comfort: to see the most beautiful woman who had ever lived. He He wanted to look upon Helen of Troy, the face that had launched 1,000 ships and brought down the greatest city of the ancient world. The demon obliged, and Helen appeared before him, a vision of perfect, silent beauty. In that moment, Faust spoke the lines that would become immortal. Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium? Sweet Helen, make me immortal with a kiss. He kissed the phantom, but it was a cold, empty comfort. He had embraced a ghost, a shadow of the past. Even in his moment of greatest desire, he found only hollowness. Throughout these 24 years, Faust was haunted by the choice he had made. 2 angels appeared to him constantly, one good, urging him to repent and turn back to God, and one evil, telling him it was too late, that his sins were too great to be forgiven. At several points, overwhelmed by despair, Faust was on the verge of repentance. He would call out to Christ, begging for salvation. But each time, Mephistopheles would appear to drag him back, reminding him of their pact, threatening him with torment, or distracting him with another empty pleasure. In one devastating scene, Faust asked Mephistopheles a simple question: who made the world? The demon, a creature of hell, could not speak the name of God. He refused to answer. In that moment, Faust understood the terrible truth. The knowledge he had gained was incomplete. He had learned the mechanics of the universe, but had been denied the one truth that gave it meaning. He had gained the world, but had no one to thank for it. His intellectual pride had become his ultimate prison. He was too intelligent to have simple faith, but not wise enough to see that his intelligence was leading him to ruin. He believed he was the master of his own destiny, even as he had willingly signed that destiny over to another. As the 24th year drew to a close, Faust's bravado crumbled into pure terror. The man who had once scoffed at hell now felt its flames licking at his heels. He summoned his students and fellow scholars for a final farewell, confessing everything: the pact, the power, the price. He was a broken man, weeping and trembling, begging them to pray for him, though he believed himself to be beyond prayer. His students, horrified, offered to stay with him through the final night, but he sent them away. This was a fate he had to face alone. What do you think drove Faust to make such a horrific bargain? Was it scientific curiosity or something darker? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Left alone in his study as the clock began to strike 11, Faust faced the final hour of his life. What followed was one of literature's most agonizing soliloquies, a desperate, rambling plea to a universe that seemed deaf to his cries. He begged time to stand still. He called on the sun to rise again and burn away the darkness. He tried to bargain with God, offering to burn his books, the symbol of the knowledge that had damned him. He wished for 1,000 years in hell, 1,000,000 years, if only he could be saved at the last. But the clock kept ticking. He cursed his own parents for giving him life. He wished he had been born an animal, a creature without a soul, so that he could simply cease to exist when he died. He looked at the stars and pleaded with them to draw him up like fog, so that his body and soul might dissipate into the air. He saw the blood of Christ streaming in the firmament, a symbol of the redemption he had rejected, but felt he could not reach it. As the clock struck 12, the doors of his study flew open. Thunder echoed through the night. The room filled with the stench of sulfur. The voices of devils were heard, ready to claim their prize. Faust's final, terrified cry hung in the air. "Ah, Mephistopheles!" The next morning, his students, having spent the night listening to horrifying sounds from the study, cautiously entered the room. The scene they discovered was one of absolute carnage. The walls were smeared with blood and brains. An eye was found on the floor, teeth scattered in a corner. The room looked as though some terrible, violent force had ripped a man apart limb from limb. Faust's body was eventually found outside, thrown upon a dung heap. Its neck was broken, its form so mangled and twisted that it was barely recognizable as human. The brilliant Dr. Faust, who had sought to become a god, had been reduced to offal. The scientist who had pursued immortality had been utterly and violently destroyed. If this revelation about the true fate of Dr. Faust has opened your eyes to the dark side of scientific ambition, smash that like button and join our community of truth seekers who aren't afraid to confront history's most disturbing mysteries. The horrifying death of Dr. Faust was meant to be a cautionary tale, a brutal warning from the church to the ambitious men of the Renaissance. This, it said, is what happens when you prioritize human knowledge over divine faith. This is the price of unbridled ambition. But tyrants and theologians have never understood the human spirit. The story meant to terrify people into submission did the opposite. It fascinated them. Faust became a new kind of hero, the tragic overreacher, the man who dared to challenge the limits of the universe even if it destroyed him. Christopher Marlowe saw him as a tragic hero of the Renaissance, a man whose intellectual curiosity was both his greatest glory and his fatal flaw. 2 centuries later, the great German writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe would transform the story completely. In Goethe's epic masterpiece, Faust is not damned. His constant striving for knowledge and experience, his refusal to ever be satisfied with any earthly pleasure, is seen as noble. In the end, after a long life of triumphs and terrible sins, Faust is saved. As the devils come to claim his soul, angels descend from heaven and carry him away, declaring, "He who strives on and lives to strive can earn redemption still." Goethe's version reflects a modern world that has come to value progress, ambition, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge above all else. We live in a Faustian age. We split the atom, knowing it could destroy us all. We map the human genome, opening doors to genetic manipulation that could redefine humanity itself. We reach for the stars while our own planet burns. We constantly seek to overcome the limitations of our bodies, pursuing technological immortality through artificial intelligence and genetic engineering. Every day, scientists make bargains with forces they don't fully understand. Every breakthrough comes with unforeseen consequences. Every discovery opens new doors to both salvation and damnation. The story of Faust asks the question that has haunted Western civilization for 500 years. How much knowledge is too much? At what point does our quest for power lead us to sacrifice our own humanity? Consider the scientists who created the atomic bomb, knowing it would give humanity the power to destroy itself. Consider the researchers developing artificial intelligence that could surpass human intelligence and render us obsolete. Consider the geneticists who could soon give us the power to redesign our own species. Are they heroes of human progress, or are they modern Fausts, making deals they don't fully comprehend? The legend of the scientist who turned himself into a monster is not just a medieval horror story. It is a mirror reflecting our own deepest ambitions and most profound fears. We are all Dr. Faust, standing in our laboratories and research facilities, surrounded by the accumulated knowledge of our age, and still feeling that it is not enough. We all, in our own way, feel the temptation to make a pact for something more time, more power, more understanding, more control over the fundamental forces of reality. The story of Faust serves as a permanent, terrifying reminder of the price that might be asked in return. His mangled body, torn apart in that dusty German study 500 years ago, is a warning written across the centuries. Be careful what you wish for, because the devil always keeps his promises. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the Faust legend is this. In our modern age of limitless technological ambition, we may have already signed the contract without realizing it. The clock is ticking. The only question is, how much time do we have left? What do you think? Are we living in a modern Faustian age where science has become our deal with the devil? Have we already traded our humanity for technological power? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more hidden truths that challenge everything you thought you knew about history.